I'd like to call to order the Proctor City Council meeting for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll perform a roll call at this time. Councilor Benson?
Present.
Councilor Reuter?
Present.
Councilor Johnson?
Present.
Councilor DeWall?
Present.
Mayor Ward is also present. Please let the minutes reflect all others in attendance, including Administrator Rich and Attorney Bray via telephone.
And your guests.
What's that?
Oh, and your others present.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Bray. Along with Officer Rebel and Chief Gatus. Looking for a motion to approve the City Council meeting minutes from Monday, August 21st, 2023. Councilor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Reuter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Benson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to comments and suggestions from the citizens present. The public comment and suggestion period of this meeting is when the City Council offers a time for everyone in attendance or watching from home to address the City Council. Once we move on from the public comment and suggestion period of the meeting, members of the public will no longer be allowed to address the council unless the mayor acknowledges you. As a general rule, the council will listen to all comments but will not comment on or respond to any comments made by speakers. The council will not engage in dialogue. However, any council member may ask questions. If you'd like to address City Council during public comment and suggestion period of the meeting, please come forward to the podium or dial 218-628-6289. Before you begin, please state your name and address for the meeting minutes. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone addressing the City Council will be prohibited from using obscene, profane, or threatening language or boisterous conduct that disrupts the meeting or the security of the public. Is there anyone at this time that is interested in participating in the public comment suggestion period of the meeting? Please come forward or dial 218-628-6289. We'll give that about a minute. Hearing none, we'll move on. Looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll make that motion pulling 3A. If there's a second.
Second.
Second by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 3A under Committee Reports, Blight Committee Minutes, August 21st, 2023. I just wanted to make council aware that there was a blight meeting held on 8/21. The minutes were in your packet. And looking for council's direction if anyone had any ideas or comments regarding the meeting minutes from that committee meeting. So the way I'm kind of envisioning it, and Administrator Rich, Chief Gatus, Councilor DeWall, all sit on that with me. But the Blight Committee wants to work on addressing the blight policy. We want to create a new policy, kind of update ours, and bring that back to council. In the meantime, I think it'd be appropriate for any blighted issues within the city to come before that committee for discussion and then come back to council for any action to be taken on the properties discussed at the committee meeting. Is that how council kind of thought that process was gonna happen, or what's council's opinions on that? Or Chief Gaddis or Administrator Rich as well? Counselor Benson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a need to recreate what we got, or is it possible to just tweak it? Is there a need to have a new policy, or could we just tweak the existing policy that we have?
I don't think we're gonna rewrite a whole policy, but there are some things within our policy that could be updated or maybe done more efficiently. At the last meeting, there were two other communities, with their 2 other communities, blight policies that were presented to us, and they had some different ideas on how they operate, and the committee was looking into taking some of those ideas and implementing them into our policy. So we're not creating a whole new policy, but we'll update the one we currently have to improve it.
It seems by the meeting minutes that it was productive.
Yeah, it was. It was a good meeting to have. And I think the committee should remain intact and continue forward with the work they've already started, because there's some good changes that can come out of it, I believe. But if I'm hearing nothing else, I guess that's how Blight Committee will proceed. Oh, Chief Gaddis.
The only thing I have is our committee members that we had, because it was kind of like confusing there, what the council really wanted on there.
Thanks, Ted.
There we go. Who the committee members were, like, you know, what did the council want, who did they want the makeup of it? Because we had one member that was kind of, didn't really know that they're supposed to be there, I think. So I think that would be nice to have it clarified.
Yeah, and how, does that need to be put into, you know how January 1, or first meeting in January, we always, does that need to be defined? And we don't need bylaws for that committee, do we? I mean,
It's kind of like a ad hoc, you're tackling one purpose. And
yeah, so at our last meeting, or a couple meetings ago, we discussed having the chief, the administrator, our attorney, 2 counselors, a street guy, street person, and P&Z.
So
So
would that-
our street person was also on P&Z,
Yes.
so I was unaware of 2 P&Z people being there. I guess I don't have heartburn over that, but it's, I guess, what do we want to see as?
Yeah, I was understanding Jay was representing streets and Mr. Twomley was representing P and Z.
Okay. All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just like, just clarify it, that's all.
Yeah, and that's fine with me. I didn't have heartburn over that, so
Okay.
that'll work.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that?
And then, yeah, if I may, every little thing wouldn't come to council, correct?
No, in my opinion, I would say when we update our policy, that would have to come for approval. And then if we have any issues with any properties, we would need to get council approval on how we want to react to that situation, I guess.
Wouldn't there be some situations, you know, somebody's got a car that, whatever, it's gotta be moved, or, that wouldn't go through council, right? That would be dealt with.
Hopefully, in the new blight policy, it will dictate who's taking care of the issue and what the ramifications for the issues are to be resolved, you know, whether it's fines or towing or what have you,
Yeah, I don't-
for your circumstance there with the car.
Me personally, I don't wanna micromanage what should be done and the responsibility of somebody else to take care of that.
Right.
There's probably gonna be a point where it goes through step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then it comes to us, you know, that's my personal opinion there.
Yep, and I would agree with that.
I would concur. There's different severity levels,
Yeah,
and with part of what the mayor was expounding on was just having a simple write-up application where somebody could come to City Hall and write the nature of the event, of what's going on, and then that could be categorized. This is a level 1, this is a level 2, level 3. Level 1 might be simple education, letting them know that, hey, garbage cans, we live in a bare area, dogs. Garbage can needs to be brought in after garbage is picked up. Other levels might get cranked up, so I see it exactly how you're thinking, where on some situations it may have to go to council to just get more or less a stamp of approval.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Counselor Benson?
I view it more of an administrative action. Once we put together the formal form and process, then it becomes administrative until a citizen comes in and complains to us.
Right, or if there's a cost expense to it
Yeah.
that exceeds council, yeah. No,
But I
and,
like what-
go ahead.
I like what Administrator Rich proposed. I thought that was good direction.
Yeah, and I would agree. Like I said, the meeting was very informative and good ideas came out of it. And looking at those other two communities' blight policies, there were some good creative ideas that were in those. So if we can implement them here, I think it will be a smooth process. And to Councilor Johnson's point, it won't be brought here every time. There'll be clear direction on what to do. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Looking for a motion to approve the Blight Committee minutes.
So moved.
Councilor Benson made the motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 4A, Clerk advises Council 2024 Senate Capital Investment Committee Tour. Administrator Rich.
Thank you, Mayor. And as you were all there, so you understood what took place, but for a matter of record for the public, the city of Proctor was visited by the Senate Capital Investment Committee today. We hosted them at the arena because it had some relevant information. That location had relevancy to our presentation. And they heard 4 presentations for 4 bonding requests. One was for utility improvements. One was for an economic development project. The 4th was for our Munger Trail Spur, and the 5th was for security fencing upgrades to the South St. Louis County Fairgrounds. And I thought the presentations went well, and we will wait till February where we start lobbying those legislators and the governor for funding recommendations.
Thank you, and I'd just like to add that the presentations, Administrator Rich, Councilor Benson, Chair Mattson with PETA, and Commissioner Schwartzbauer all did very well presenting to the Senate committee. So thank you for that, and Senator Hochschild's support when he spoke up was very welcomed as well. So thank you all for participating today.
If
Councilor Johnson.
would we be sending them thank yous
We could,
for
that would be appropriate.
Grant and,
Representatives Lesnikar was also present, yeah.
I thought it was really cool that they were there.
Shows they support the community, so that's nice. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4B, Second Street Project Update. Administrator Rich.
We did meet a milestone this week. Our goal was to have 3rd and 9th open for school start, and it was. We had a meeting this morning, a regular weekly meeting, and Superintendent Juttinen reported that as in regards to traffic and getting kids to school safely, that everything went off without a hitch. So we're happy that we met that milestone. They were going to be working on the second half of 2nd Street with storm sewers, and the project is still on time.
Thank you. And since we have Chief Gatis and Sergeant Riebel in the room, I know there were some issues with fast-moving cars on the newly paved roads. Has that ceased or has that continued?
Well, as we all know, when Almac was done, we got the similar concerns, complaints about that, and yes, we've got a few calls on that already. But it's pretty hard to go through there today.
Yeah.
So we will monitor it and keep it in our thoughts.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4C, JET exhibit update. Administrator Rich.
It looks like we will be closing on this insurance claim. Due to volunteer support and repairs, the jet was secured, and it was secured to the insurance company's liking. So we are able to submit a claim. We had lift rental, and we had an engineering report that needs to pay. It was around $3,000 to $4,000. Our deductible is $1,000. So we'll recover some of the cost. But golf course manager reported it's very secure compared to what it was, and the maintenance crew is happy with it as well.
Nice, thank you for that. Any discussion on that? No, it's nice it didn't have to come all the way down, right? So, 4D, SRO contract. Administrator Rich.
So our school resource officer contract with the school district is expired, and we are working on a new one. However, you have information in your packet that there was some legislative changes that the state is struggling with, law enforcement and schools. So there'll probably be some major changes to our contract with the school, because this legislative decisions really change how our police department their presence in the school. And if you had any questions on that, Sergeant Riepel and Chief Gatus are here to answer those questions. But we are aware the contract is expired, and we will be working on updated language.
Any conversation regarding that, Counselor Benson?
So is the SRO working under a memorandum of understanding
Yeah.
at this point?
Yes.
Thank you.
Counselor DeWall?
When would we see a proposal, are you thinking?
Well, Chief Gates just indicated today that there's talk and indication that Governor Walz might be calling a special session to take care of this problematic language and to come up with a clear guidance and understanding of what is expected of law enforcement presence in the school. So, I mean, there's our financial part of it. That's between us and the district, but there's also some major language changes that we have to wait for some guidance on.
I guess I'm more on the economical, financial side.
Yeah, and I guess
Because I'm confused a little bit with this government, because at the end of the day, I was under the impression they can still do, if they need to, as far as, I don't know what would be the proper term.
well, and I guess sitting here looking at it, we're still providing them a service, right? So whether, because isn't the legislative language regarding hands-on restraints type of stuff? So even if that language were to be upheld and the SRO couldn't do restraint type of, we're still providing them law enforcement personnel within their school walls. Does that have to wait to be negotiated? I mean, we're still providing them a service.
The both of you sigh.
Regardless, you know, if we don't have a contract, we do have a contract, we'd have to respond, right? The language is such as that, yes, the Attorney General Keith Ellison has wrote opinion. The Chiefs of Police Association, Sheriff's Association has asked for, 3 comments. We got 1, basically. And it is vague, what Administrator Rich is saying, but Mike Bradley understands what the SRO understands, what you can do and we can't do. There is some certain use of force laws that we can sit there and use, but in the end of the day, the school staff knows what we cannot do. I don't know, it's really...
Can we explain that one scenario that Sergeant Riebel and I talked about of if an SRO was working a football game and there is a student who is needing his attention?
Yeah.
Yes, please. I
So one scenario, school event, and you have an unwanted guest there. Guest has been asked to leave, you're trespassed from school property, this school event. The guest becomes a passive resistive type of person. He's not a harm to himself or other people. Under the new law, the SRO or an agent or somebody contracted to the school could not physically handcuff that person, arrest them, to move them, because in case law, applying handcuffs is looked at as a use of force. The new rules state the only time SRO, an agent, or a contracted employee of the school can use force is to prevent harm to the person or another person. So in a situation like that, where you just have somebody refusing to leave, but he's not actively resisting, trying to punch, hurt himself or somebody else or herself, the SRO, in theory, the guidance is they would have to call another officer who then falls under a different case law, statutory law, as it pertains to use of force, and that other officer could then handcuff, use force as necessary and reasonable to then move or escort that individual off the grounds. So in some circumstances, yes, it can tie the hands of the SRO.
But not that of another officer that is working on behalf of the city, per se. If the
And that's where some language in the contract may come into play. I mean, it all comes down to words and language. What will the officers of Proctor PD, not just the SRO, be looked at as agents or contracted to the school for services? Another theory that was brought up, if school officials call us directly or 911, are they then they're contracting our law enforcement services now. Now, if a student called something, that'd be pretty much considered like a member of the public calling us 911 for help. But that's where some of the confusion lies. So if the school calls, say Bradley, Officer Bradley, the SRO, isn't working, and Superintendent Jutman calls 911 or calls our office and say, we need a cop up here now. Okay, is he now invoking law enforcement services for the school? Whereas maybe the student that's getting assaulted or a witness calls us, then it can fall under different legal ramifications or categories. So yeah, unfortunately it comes down to words and how it's worded in the contract, and that's a discussion we'll have to have, because in the past, it was nice to have all the officers of Proctor PD be inclusive, so if something happened at Bayfield, it's Independent School District 704, we could go over there and help out. Well, now I would try to more be exclusive to only the SRO can respond to school calls. Because then that takes out the other officers who aren't SRO certified, and we fall under what we've been guided to throughout our law enforcement career on the reasonable use of force if need be. So in this scenario where somebody's trespassed from a football game and school officials are like, we want this guy to leave, he won't leave, SRO comes, you need to leave, you're trespassed, I'm not moving, okay? The guidance now is call a different officer that isn't an SRO per se, and that other officer can then use reasonable force to handcuff and arrest and remove that individual from the area.
So it's only hamstringing the SRO.
Well, in our,
It
Depends on who makes that
can
call.
be, but depending on how you interpret the contractual language, if it's somehow interpreted that all members or all officers of the Proctor PD are contracted to the school to provide services, then you can kind of be brought in to as an SRO per se.
Right, I don't see it that way according to our contract, because they're paying for limited hours of a specific SRO. You know, if last year, for example, if our SRO is on vacation or a family emergency and has to take time away from work, or they only quantify X amount of hours a day based on what's being contracted for, if they're contracted from 8 to 10, but then they go back over here, to me, they're no longer working in the capacity of an SRO.
Right, and I don't have the contract with me, I'd have to look at it. My understanding was in the contract, it didn't necessarily in some parts define or specify SRO, it just said law enforcement officers. And so I'm a law enforcement officer, so now if the school calls and I have to go to respond, now am I acting as an agent or a contracted employee per se of the school because I'm responding to a request from the actual school district or an administrator? That's where it can, yeah.
And there is language like that in our contract that says that we can contract, the school can contract with us for additional services in and above the SRO position, and that we will invoice them for those services. So there's clearly a contractual agreement. When they ask for extra patrol at a parade or extra some enforcement at a football game, we are contracting with them. And that's where the use of force
And
language will
correct,
change.
and a good example of it was the last Hammerhead game. SRO wasn't available to work it because he was out of town, so one of the other officers worked it. So right there, you're working a contracted services, so to speak, because we usually get reimbursed for working those special events. So then that officer now has to play by a different set of rules than if he was just randomly patrolling, doing his other duties throughout the city.
What constitutes an officer as an SRO? Can any officer be an SRO, or do you need that specific SRO training?
So in the contract, it says, in our contract, it says, an SRO means a licensed police officer who is employed by the city and is assigned to provide SRO duties or additional services pursuant to this agreement.
So you don't need to go through the SRO training that Officer Bradley went through.
I mean, yeah, it'd be more internal departmental policies, kind of like promotional policies. What are the minimum qualifications we look for? And I'd have to look and see what those are. You know, usually there's some minimal standard. I'm not sure if like going through NASRO school is a requirement for the SRO. I know myself, I went through it, and then Officer Bradley has just completed that training as well. But I think there's some leeway. But again, that'd have to be an internal discussion as far as what we want it for minimum qualifications.
But per state guidelines,
Per state guidelines,
anyone can be an SRO with no
Correct.
training whatsoever.
Right.
Okay. Counselor Benson?
One of the items in the new law, the way I read it, is a clause, if you will, that prevents law enforcement officials for sharing or getting information from other agencies.
I don't. I mean, yeah, you can talk about that. I mean,
And I
there's,
guess-
yeah, there's some things even like FERPA, and I don't remember what the acronym stands for, about what we can share with the school, what the school can share with us, but as far as sharing info with other agencies, I'll let the chief.
And I guess what I was getting at is this something that inhibits officers from doing their jobs?
Yes. Simple answer, yes.
I think there's even some schools I don't think can share a lot of info nowadays between other schools.
With the
So-
HIPAA and all, something similar?
Right, yep, because I remember having some discussions, you know, some of the school officials would be like, sometimes we don't know the past problems a student had coming to our school now, you know, because they've been kicked out of every other school for whatever reasons, and they come to Proctor, they're just like, you need to enroll them in Proctor, but they don't have a background check, so to speak, you know, so it even, I think, ties the hands of school officials, you know, knowing that stuff, but I haven't looked at specifics per se, what you could share, what you can't with other agencies. Usually the only time I ever shared information was if part of my investigation led me into another jurisdiction where a crime could have been committed by somebody in that jurisdiction. And then you talk with the SRO if they have one and disseminate that information. So that's the only time I've ever ran into it where I would share information. It was part of a criminal investigation that occurred in Proctor, but then there are also facets of it that occurred in another jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor.
maybe I'm looking at this too simplistic, but to me it sounds like we might have to change our internal policies of, if you're gonna do the SRO position, you're gonna have to be qualified to whatever that group body decides as minimum qualifications. My one question to both of you is, when we have a school event, whether it be a football game, prom, or whatever many various events they have, most likely we have 2 officers on duty, correct?
It all depends. Sometimes there'll be what I consider a road officer that's covering calls in the city, and then I may be on duty for part of that officer's shift. During the summer months, yes, for most of the shift, we had a power shift, so there were usually 2 actual road officers to handle calls throughout the city. But yeah, depending on training, vacation, it all varies. So I don't want to say there's always 2 officers on, because like tonight, right now, in theory, we only have 1 officer working the road, answering calls.
I'm just thinking, by the time we wait for legislation to come through with whatever it is they're gonna do, it's gonna be late, so that, to me, it would be simple to put us out of liability, harm's way, to simply state that they are contracted for SRO, it's at this rate. Whatever they can afford, this is how many hours you get, because the cost of doing business is going up again. And then that way, if we've identified that, that is the contract. It doesn't, any language that would state in the contract, law enforcement would have to be stricken, or crossed out, and it'd have to just state SRO. That way, if Officer Rebo's working power shift, 2 to 2, there's a football game on a Friday night, and the SRO wants to put in time at the football game, they've allotted X amount to pay for that, the SRO is there. If SRO runs into a complication, he can call power shift patrol officer, come in and deal with it under, by definition of what they can deal with, until they get this all straightened out.
You still may be running into the issue though, then that officer that isn't the SRO that's working it, since it is a contractual service with the school district, that sucks that officer in. Even though he's not an SRO, that sucks that officer into the new use of force restrictions for school officials and law enforcement officers.
Right, unless you limit it to 2 people, the 2 people that are trained. If those 2 particular people are off or whatever staggers, I mean, they do an events calendar, I'm sure it's already done for the entire year.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if we can't schedule around that, and 2 having to be off, then we're acting as just like we would if we had no contract and they called us over to go over there.
I don't know if it's that clear. This is why it's such a problem right now, to the point where the governor is going to be probably calling a special session on it. I don't know that it's that clear, cut and dried. If it's the financial part of that you're worried about,
I'm worried about 2 things, financial and liability for our officers, trying to do the right thing and getting pinched in the middle of something. So I'm trying to eliminate that risk altogether, but still be able to go over there in an active setting and do what they need and have been trained to do, but following this set of statutes.
Yeah.
But with the current language we have in our SRO contract that talks about
additional services.
that's where they're gonna get looped into being considered an SRO. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, and you don't have to get hung up, I guess, using the SRO terminology. Basically, any police officer that is engaged in some type of contractual service with the school district is brought into the new use of force
Right.
parameters.
I understand that, we don't, unless we can't provide that service until things get figured out. If the SRO, the normal officer that is handling the SRO job function,
Mm-hmm.
Bradley, is off, maybe we can't cover that.
And I think, and the chief can correct me if I'm wrong, past practice has been, when we haven't had like an SRO, we didn't have that program really, it was encouraged that the officer, whoever is working, stop by the game just for community-oriented policing and to keep the peace if need be. But that, I think, was probably different circumstances, because under those circumstances, we weren't getting money from the school to provide that security or that law enforcement presence. So, that's something we could look at too, I guess, going forward, is we don't really have any contractual obligations to the school for their events, and if an officer happens to be free and can make it to these events to stop in, that's one way, I guess, to circumvent it, but you're always opening yourself up to,
Well,
more issues down the road then.
you have to establish the line for the entire school year.
Yep.
These are the hours we're working on these specific days and these specific events. This is when we are contracted under SRO. There it is. Anything outside of that
Right.
is not under contract. And that's what I'm getting at for right now, is at least it sets a baseline so that we don't handcuff our own law enforcement officers of doing getting in a position of where they gotta take 2 seconds and decipher in their head,
Right.
should I, shouldn't I? Sometimes it's too late. That's all I was getting. That's why I said it was more simple-minded to me, is just to identify, here's the money that we have allocated for this service. Here's the events and hours we're gonna cover. That's what we're contracting for, period. Until further language comes out. Then we know well in advance how to map that out a little bit using our schedule. And then it doesn't put anyone in the middle.
Chief Gates.
And what I'm doing, I'm trying to talk to the other chiefs and sheriffs in the area that do have, obviously, our issue too. is so we don't reinvent the wheel, that we work together as a group of law enforcement agencies and go, okay, what are you doing, what are we doing? Get the language, talk to our attorneys, obviously they're attorneys, and get some language here so we can sit there and, you know, I don't wanna have a knee-jerk reaction and all of a sudden we yank everybody out of there, so let's look at this first and get what they're doing too. So we can put something together for you guys to look at, so.
Is this something the city should be looking at, sending a letter down, opposing this language change?
Well, it wouldn't hurt, but, I mean, that's why I still would like to, I wanna see what the other agencies are doing, so if we do it together,
Yeah.
like our group, NLAC, Mr. Benson's familiar with NLAC, is that, you know, we have 38 agencies in that group. When we have 38 agencies that are opposed to this language, it has a little bit more clout than just, Hermantown Proctor sending something down.
Well, keep us
But-
posted on that,
Yeah, but
please.
it doesn't hurt to have that letter go down from a group like that, and then a letter from the city too.
Well, and I would imagine it's much easier, like Hermantown, where they have 2, 3, 4 full-time SROs.
No, one.
Was it Duluth that has 4?
They have like,
Duluth has 3, I think, yeah.
Okay. But even just having a full-time SRO makes it more complicated in our situation because of, we're not there full-time.
yes and no, really, because they're there full-time. We're here, we're not, so it's that, like what he's talking about, the agent, contracted, that's the language that we need to fix.
No, what I'm saying, Chief, is that when you have a full-time SRO, it's much easier to cut that black and white line. There's no gray. Because that SRO runs into that situation where they gotta follow the new rules. They can call another Hermantown on duty and say, I need you to come and deal with this.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
cut and dried, because they're contracted, they're paying for that
Yeah.
service.
Those are the questions we need to answer, though. I get your point, what it is, but there's also people that say the complete opposite to that. So, but it's something, obviously, we gotta work on. It's clear as mud.
I did email you all the SRO language that's in the current contract, so you can take a look at it. Maybe you see something in there that we're not.
Cool. Thank
See.
you. No, good discussion, and thanks for being here to explain that mess, but, any other questions regarding that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 4E, 2023 Trunk or Treat. Administrator Rich.
Thank you. On a lighter side, if you would like to have trunk or treat, the Proctor Moose has reached out to us and they would prefer to have it on the 28th or the 29th and would like to collaborate. We have traditionally done it on the 31st, which is a Tuesday night. 28th or 29th is a Saturday or Sunday.
Saturday or something. Okay. One of the things, what does staff want? I know in the past, Megan's been involved, Administrator Rich has been involved, Chief Gatus and his staff has been involved, some firefighters. Do we have people that are interested in helping out? Would council like to participate and help out? The volunteers are the ones that are putting a lot of time into this. So I think it's a great event, but do the volunteers want to continue doing it? I know Tuesday, probably not, midweek, right? Beginning of the week, midweek, whatever you want to consider Tuesday. But then a Saturday, Sunday is the weekend too, so. What does council feel? We want to continue a trunk or treat, or now that COVID is hopefully gone and past, let the kids get back to knocking on doors? I mean, it's a neat thing to have at city, but I feel that the volunteers are not there. And it's not a slam against people who haven't done it in the past. I mean, it's a lot of time and a lot of work to put that on.
Maybe before we get into making that decision, maybe it would be worthwhile Administrator Rich reach out, Chief Elquist. We can get a couple of weeks and people will be having some meetings and see what those groups want to do. And then make a decision next council meeting.
The 18th? I'm
The
fine with-
18th.
I'm fine with that. If
It's still
council's
plenty
fine.
of time before either date. My question, if the Moose is are we doing it here again, or are we doing it at the Moose?
I think they just want to collaborate on the same day, so it creates more of an event, you know, so there's more places for people to trunk or treat.
Oh, so they would do their thing
Yeah.
at, okay.
And I like it here. I think having it here is nice. It gets people to come see City Hall. But, yeah, I'm okay with that idea, Counselor.
So we're looking at either the 28th or 29th of October.
I don't, that's not what I understood. I understood I was to ask whether staff wants to do it on a weekend or actually do it on holiday night, on the holiday.
But the Moose, did the Moose say they wanted to do it 28th, 29th? Yeah. No, I would see if we have volunteers for any of those dates, you know, 28th, 29th, 31st, whatever it may be, and if we do, we can do it. If we don't, then we don't want to have two people putting on that event. So, is that something you can do, Administrator Rich? Cool. Any other conversation on that? Hearing none. It'll bring us to 5B. So I can't recall if it was last meeting or 2 meetings ago, but in your packet is 2023 Public Safety Aid Fire Department purchase. The last time we discussed this, we approved the PD's request, so they could order the car. And we were gonna hold this off till Q4 of this year, but it looks like there's gonna be a 3 to 5% increase on these items after September 30th. So Chief Helquist is asking that we approve his purchases there for the helmets, the dual cert gear, and the hose in the amount of $55,000. Is there a motion to approve that request before the increase? Councilor Benson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sent by Councilor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. That brings us to 6A under new business, Second Street change order number 3. So in your packet is a change order in the amount of $19,384.19 to Utility Systems of America. It looks like the gas company relocated a portion of the gas main across Second Street, and the contractor was unable to blast with their equipment, so they had to get some new equipment in there and do some blasting and trench and rock hammer work. So looking for a motion to approve pay order or change order number 3 in the amount of $19,384.19.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second? Second. Sent by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. A few meetings ago, maybe a month ago now, Mr. Sherm Carlson attended our council meeting with the letter from Reed talking about a $50,000 check they could provide if the city would match it to get the pickleball court up and running. And he was hoping to have a decision made by our first meeting in September. So did council have any thoughts regarding that request? I think it's a, I think it'd be foolish if council didn't take them up on that offer. It's $50,000 on our part, but it's $50,000 on their part to get something that the city's been looking at building here for the last year or two. So I think there's a lot of work still that needs to go with it as far as planning, but in my opinion, I think we should agree to those terms that we could match their donation. So I'll make that a motion if there's a second.
I'll second.
Councilor Benson seconds it. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr.
Councilor
Mayor.
DeWall.
I would state as long as it's on specified city-owned property.
Yeah, and my thought on that is there would probably be some planning meetings, and then anything that is planned would come before council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. Oh, Councilor Johnson.
Do I abstain from this one?
You aren't getting any financial benefit from it.
Because I'm on the Reed board?
Are you getting any campaign contributions?
No.
Then you're fine.
Good question though, Councilor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Brings us to 6C, Resolution 34-23, accepting a donation. The Proctor Area Chamber of Commerce donated $750 for the 2023 annual Hoghead Festival fireworks display. Looking for a motion to accept that donation.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? I would just like to thank the Proctor Area Chamber of Commerce for their generous donation. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6D, Gulf Advisory Committee application. In your council packet was an application from Rick Thorson looking to be seated on the Gulf Committee. Is there a motion to accept the application?
I'll make that motion.
Councilor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Benson. Any further discussion?
How many members are on this?
I thought it listed them here. Did it? Maybe it didn't.
I was just gonna further, did this already go through that committee?
It did
Advisory
go-
board?
It did go through the committee.
So this is a recommendation
Yeah.
from that, okay.
And Councilor Johnson, I know is on it, but
Okay, no, just,
do you know how many people are on it?
I'm trying to count, and
We just had a meeting too.
was there an opening or
yes,
just adding?
yeah, because
Mr. Downs passed away. So it is Roberta Thorsvik, Dick Wickland, Barb, Cindy Upton, Rory, and golf course manager, and I are advisory.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6E, Election Allocation Fund. Administrator Rich.
Thank you. I recommend that you default this allocation to St. Louis County. Spending $155 on our election is not going to make a difference, but collectively with the county, I think it will. You have the resolution in your packet. If you have any
Thank-
questions.
Thank you. And this is, we do this every year, right? And is this the one where if we don't give it to the county, we have it for 2 years? Is that, no?
I've never seen this before,
Okay.
but in my past experience, we didn't have equipment. So I don't know if this is historically true of Proctor, but I don't think I've ever seen this allocation before.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yeah,
Mayor, this is just an allocation to help cover costs associated? Or is this different than, like, because they paid so much for, like, volunteer, there used to be like an expense sheet that you would turn in at the end of it. This is different than that?
To my knowledge, the state has never helped with run local elections.
No, the county would.
I don't believe that's true.
No, we'd send for reimbursement. Because we had to keep track of hours of all the volunteers. No, because I sent it,
Yeah,
and it was not, I mean, it was like up to $1,000 or something. So I'm just curious if this is what they're sending us to cover overhead? Or because we're a voting center, that's just the cost of doing business to maintain our citizens, community reps to come here and vote? I guess I'm confused.
This is the one, wasn't it in years past, Administrator Rich? This is for absentee voting, right? Where we could have been a location, but we chose not to, and the county administers all that for us. So our residents gotta go down to the courthouse to drop their absentee ballots off. So are we paying them letting them keep the $155 to oversee our absentee votes?
No, I think this is completely separate. This is 100% new. This funding stream was just passed in 2023. I don't think it has anything to do with training or equipment.
Because it says in here, since the county currently administers absentee balloting for the city and does not bill related costs back to the city, We are asking that you allow St. Louis County to retain the voting operations technology and election resources voter account funds allocated to your city. So I thought this was, we're letting them keep our share, the $155 that we were gonna get to administer our absentee votes. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, that's what it is. That has nothing to do with the other that I was thinking of. So this is, if I understand this, the way you just read that, I'm rereading it now, is it's just covering that expense.
Well, no, because it doesn't cost the county $155 to administer absentee voting. I think what they're saying in that, and I don't think it's a threat, but they're saying, hey, you know, we do administer your absentee voting. This could be something that if you chose to do it, be a larger expense to you. Can you please, as a token,
Keep
let
them.
us keep this
Yeah,
money?
okay.
Yeah.
Right, that's,
But it's not like if we keep it ourselves, we have to do absentee voting.
right. So I'm saying we're money ahead if we just let them retain
Agree
it.
to this, yeah, Yeah.
Thousands and thousands ahead.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Any other discussion? Looking for a motion to accept the agreement with St. Louis County for them to keep the voter account funds allocated to the city. I'll make that motion if there's a second.
Second.
Sent by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6F, Proctor Fire Department retirement letters. In your packet were 2 letters. We'll take 2 different motions for each of these, but the first one is Bradley M. Johnson, Proctor 522, 20 years of service, and he is taking time now to focus on his growing family and their needs. He thanks the city for the memories that they gained and the relationships that he has made. So looking for a motion to accept Brad Johnson's retirement letter. Counselor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sent by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion? I'd just like to thank Brad for all of his time here the last 20 years for the city of Proctor and his commitment to the fire department. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Second letter is from Lynn Windis, another 20-year firefighter. She did head up the EMS group for the city of Proctor and was also another valuable asset to the department, as was Brad. So looking for a motion to approve her retirement letter. I'll make that motion if there's a second.
Second.
Second by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Again, I'd just like to thank Lynn for her last 20 years of service to the city and her time and commitment to the department. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6G, liquor store employee resignation letter. In your packet was a letter from clerk Dave, who is a clerk at Mountain Spirit Liquors. His last day of work will be August 25th, 2023. Thanks the city of Proctor for the opportunity to work, and he's grateful for the experience gained during his time here. Looking for a motion to approve the resignation letter. I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. 6H, 2024 budget information. In your packet was a lot of information regarding this year's general sales tax funds and food and beverage tax for our budget, 2024 budget schedule. What Finance Director Brunfeld was asking is that we review this information and we set up a budget meeting, which would have to be next week because she needs to set her proposed tax levy to the county auditor no later than September 30th. So what date next week would work for council to schedule a meeting? I cannot make it Wednesday. I believe there's another meeting the city has on Thursday.
Monday.
No, Monday night, Tuesday night there is, but during the day we have meetings Wednesday and Thursday for the city.
Right.
That wouldn't work. So Monday or Tuesday, I guess, would be our best bets, right? Monday or
Do
Tuesday.
a Monday at 4 o'clock.
What's that?
Could you do a Monday at 4 o'clock?
Would Monday at 4 work?
Yes. Oh,
I can live with it.
Let me,
how long
let
do
me
you think
text
it'll be?
Leslie as well.
Budget meeting. I've been in budget meetings that last a few hours, and I've been in them that last an hour, so. What I would suggest to council is to go over this budget information in your packet, and before whatever meeting date we have, get your questions and answers to Leslie, or questions to Leslie so she can answer. That would make the meeting go a little smoother if we could do that.
So Monday the 11th at 4?
I would have till 6. Would have 2 hours.
Yeah, we'd only have 2 hours, yeah, because Puck has a meeting at 6 o'clock that night, so. To answer your question, Councilor Benson, it would only be 2 hours at the most.
At the most.
Does that work for everybody? Cool.
I am just texting Finance Director Brunfeld.
The only request I have is on the budget summary. If she could add a column in there, can't be through third quarter, but through year-to-date through August, end of August, numbers, actual, instead of just 2023 budget.
Do you want to wait on her response, Administrator?
Let's set it, and if she says yes.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to schedule a budget meeting for Monday, September 11th at 4 PM at City Hall.
No kidding.
If there's a second? Second by Councilor Johnson. Any further discussion on that? Administrator Rich, did you get Councilor DeWall's suggestion?
I did.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Brings us to 7A, closed meeting, per Minnesota State Statutes 13D05 Subdivision 3 and 13D03. Looking for a motion to go into closed meeting regarding labor negotiations, attorney-client privilege, and economic development data.
So moved.
Councilor Reuter made the motion. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. right, we'll resume the regular city council meeting. Brings us to 7D, looking for a motion to accept the police records. I gotta get her title here. Sorry. Accept the police records manager and terminal agency coordinator letter of understanding.
I'll make that motion.
Counselor Johnson made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sent by Counselor DeWall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Mayor Ward's gonna abstain. Motion passes. Brings us to members' concerns. Counselor Benson.
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor DeWall.
Nothing.
Thank you. Counselor Johnson.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Reuter.
Nothing from me.
Me, just hope everyone had a fun and happy Labor Day weekend. And just a reminder that school is now back in session, and be mindful of students walking and biking around town while driving, and along with all the extra school buses on the streets. That is all I have. Attorney Bray.
Nothing from me.
Thank you. Administrator Rich, did you have anything to add?
I don't, thank you.
Thank you. That'll bring us to bills for approval. Looking for a motion to pay the bills in the amount of $128,376.27.
So moved.
Counselor DeWall made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Sent by Counselor Reuter. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Counselor DeWall made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Thank you.